Hi guys, Victoria here. Before we get to the podcast, I wanted to be sure you knew about the free online starter course we have available at the Victoria Stilwell Academy called Building Your Dog's Confidence. You can enroll for free anytime from anywhere. So whether you're looking for advice about your dog or you're wanting to test drive VSA before enrolling in one of our professional learning experiences, visit vsdogtrainingacademy.com now to get your free course. That's vsdogtrainingacademy.com. And now, on to the podcast. Welcome to this episode of the Positively Podcast. And I promised you that we'd do an episode about service dogs, and that's why I have my friend, fellow trainer and founder of Rover Chase and the Rover Chase Foundation, Abigail Witthauer. Welcome. And for those of you who are watching this video rather than just listening to this podcast, you are holding up the most glorious puppy. Tell me about this puppy.
This is 16-day-old puppy. His name is Howdy, and he's from our latest service dog litter. There's 5 of them, and they're 16 days old today.
Oh my gosh. And of course, I was watching because I follow you on Facebook. So I know I was watching Mom getting ready, and we were like, oh, when are the puppies going to come? And actually, these are puppies that you raise for your Service Dog Foundation, isn't it? For your Service Dog organization. So I want to talk about that. But first of all, I want to ask you a few questions about, hey, what is it like being a trainer in Pelham, Alabama? What made you become a dog trainer? I mean, I've known you for a long time. You're a VSPDT, you're Victoria Stilwell Positively Dog Trainer. You've spoken a lot to our students. You do a lot of speaking engagements. You are also speaking at the Dog Behavior Conference, which for everybody, April the 21st to the 23rd. So register. And you're talking about service dogs, lessons learned while raising heroes. But first of all, let's go back however many years ago, because I think you and I have been training kind of for the same length of time.
Yeah, I think so.
What made you become a dog trainer?
Yeah, so I always say that I came into it the good old-fashioned way, so just through family. So I was a pretty competitive equestrian as a young child, and through right before kind of that decision point that equestrians have to go to where they're like, are we going to do it like for real, like as a career or not? And I had quite a number of injuries. And so my mom was like, how about we take a year off and see if you like dog shows? And my mom had shown dogs in the late 60s and early 70s. So we had friends and family friends that showed dogs. So I started doing that, and I just kind of got bit by the bug, and I started with sight hounds. And as the years progressed, I got really interested, particularly in the sight hounds and the toy breeds that were struggling to be successful show dogs because of shyness or just not loving the dog show performance world. And I got really interested in behavior modification with those dogs. And that's kind of what started it.
Tell me about this, because, I go to Crufts, which is our largest dog show here in the United Kingdom. And also I've been to Westminster as well one time when I was doing some presenting work there. But tell me about the show world, because it's quite controversial in many ways.
I think it can be, which I will say I've always found to be a little bit strange coming from the inside, because from my perspective, growing up in it, I think conformation dog show people figured out rewards-based training and luring way before the, say, competition obedience world figured it out. Because once they figured out that dogs that are animated and alert and happy show better in conformation, then it was pretty well completely positive reinforcement for the majority of dogs at that point. So, sometimes you may see, especially I think when lay people that aren't in the industry watch it, a big debate that I have often with my interns is I have this theory that what you view as leash corrections in dog shows are maybe not leash corrections, but maybe cues with leash movement. Um, and I know that because when I show my own dogs, sometimes you do a little, what can look like a pop pop, but that's not how we train it. And it's not how it's reinforced. It's just a let's go cue without the verbal. And I think that that's sometimes where the controversy comes into play. And certainly there are dogs that don't enjoy dog shows that are still shown because they're very beautiful or they have beautiful coat or whatever it is. And that's not their favorite career path. But the vast majority of dogs that are high level of dog shows really love being show dogs.
And I always think that, that the sort of the general companion dog actually maybe leads quite, not a solitary lifestyle, but a less enriching lifestyle because, obviously their guardians are out at work or, they have other things to do. Whereas if you're in the show dog world, you are spending a lot of time with your dog. Your dog is spending a lot of time with you. And so in a way, that's very enriching. You've got a great relationship there. You have to.
Yeah, there's an enormous amount of travel with dog shows, particularly in the United States. I'm not sure if it's the same in the UK, but if you're really actively showing, even just as a hobby, not as a professional handler, you're usually on the road 25 weekends a year with your dog, and you're in the van and you're driving or in the RV, and you're staying on show sites and you're socializing and you're in, I think I've seen, I was actually just having this conversation with my spouse the other day. I think I'm only lacking 3 states in the United States that I visited. And the vast majority of that is from my time showing dogs.
Wow. Okay. And you had a Chihuahua for a very long time. In fact, that's when I met you, I think.
Yeah. I think Biggie was pretty little, maybe 18 months old when we met. And he was just the greatest dog. And I think most people that have known me for a long time know me because of Biggie. So, and he was just the coolest dog ever. He just really was.
He was the coolest. I remember him wearing a leather jacket. I was like, that is one cool Chihuahua.
Yeah, he really, I think, and that's another thing. Some people are like, oh, dogs shouldn't dress up. I'm the first to say Biggie preferred to wear clothes. He just liked attention. And so whatever it was that got him attention was completely fine with him, particularly clothing. And he had this little leather bomber jacket and this little leather, motorcycle hat, and it was a big hit. And he wore it he was 3.5 pounds, and he wore it with a little spiked collar, and people just went crazy.
Oh my God. So I was one of those. I absolutely adore him. But now you're really known actually for golden retrievers and breeding golden retrievers for service dog work. So, and I can hear that little one. Oh my gosh. That little one just did
dreaming.
A little squeak.
So he's asleep and he's doing the little puppy pop dreaming thing now. So.
All right. So you, can you tell me your journey from training? Well, of course you have a very, very successful training organization, boarding organization in Pelham, Alabama. But, and of course you utilize positive methods, which is one of the reasons, and you're extremely talented, which is one of the reasons why you're VSPDT and we love having you in the group. But how did you make that transition from being as for want of a better word, a companion dog trainer to actually service dog work?
Yeah, so the vast majority of the companion animal training that the facility does, Pelham is a little suburb of Birmingham. It's not far, 20 minutes from downtown. The vast majority of the pet dog training that's done at the facility now is done by my team. So I do very little of it. Really, the only non-service dog training I do at this point is dogs with really pretty significant behavior issues, typically major bite histories, things like that. And I still do a fair amount of that in the area. But the service dog transition was a little bit organic. I was attending college and I missed my dog, and I really wanted to get some volunteer hours for some certifications I was getting in my degree path. And so I just got it in my head that the thing I should be doing is raising a service dog on a college campus, which at that time, what feels like yesterday, but was in fact almost 20 years ago, is that was still kind of a new concept. And so I puppy raised for a big major organization all 4 years of college in the dorms. And I got really interested in service dogs at that point, and I started to really get very passionate about what was happening with those dogs. And my background in dog shows, I was really interested in the genetics of producing service dogs. That really interested me, and the general training, what these dogs could do for people. So I got very interested in that in my college years. And then, as life just happens sometimes in kind of a co-evolutionary way, I became fully disabled myself. Kind of my symptoms started late in college, and then I got, as most women in the United States do, I got my diagnosis almost 10 years later. But at that point, I was relatively disabled. So I got very interested in service dogs prior to my disability. And then as I became disabled myself, I got more and more interested in it.
What is it about golden retrievers that make such great service dogs?
Yeah, I just think they're really versatile. And I'm the first to say some of it is my personality. I think when we talk about service dogs, we always talk about the big three. And the big thing I say is that they're the big three for the reason. Every major service dog organization really in the world uses golden retrievers, Labradors, standard poodles, or mixes of the three. And there's a reason those are the most popular. They just have the skill sets and also the size and durability that is often needed for success. For me, I really loved the Goldens because I love Labradors. I've had standard poodles for several years as well. The Goldens are just a little bit less. And a little bit less for me suits my personality. The best way I can describe at least the Goldens from our lines that we produce for our program is they just really don't have a lot of original thoughts. They're like, well, that sounds like a great idea. And then you're like, well, what if we did this? And they're like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And they just really don't have a lot of opinions. And I love that. They're soft. They're squishy. They are really strange from a training perspective, because the things we think about with pet dogs, about threat gestures and making them anxious with kissing them in the face and squishing them, we're really cautious about that with pet dogs. And our Goldens almost need that. It's a really interesting genetic kind of selective breeding component that they've come out with our dogs, that they want to be squished. They want threat gestures. And I just find that to be like really melty and also really lovely as service dogs.
For people who don't understand what threat gestures mean, could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so threat gestures are I always kind of think of it as the difference of language between dogs as a species and humans as a species, or as primates, or whatever your belief is in that. We tend to be really frontal and forward. For those of you guys that are watching this podcast on the video, I love webcams for this, because when we greet dogs, we're like, oh, hey, how are you? And we reach right into their face. And that's just what we do, because they're so, they have so much neoteny and they're so cute and squishy. But a lot of dogs, that's not how they communicate with each other within their species. They're much more arced in their approach, much less eye contact, much more rear end greeting than front end greeting on polite greetings. And so most dogs have some sensitivity towards that very frontal human-based greeting that we do. Whereas many service dogs, you see this in a lot of programs, have kind of been selectively bred to either not have an aversion to that or even seek out some very frontal, very in the face greetings, which is incredibly valuable for service animals.
I've been very fortunate to be on the board of a service dog organization here in Georgia, and which mostly breeds golden retrievers, some poodles and retriever mixes, some Labradors, but mostly golden retrievers. And I absolutely see what you're talking about, even though they're a different line from yours. I absolutely see what you're talking about, because it seems like those sort of boundaries that we have and we teach people to have with most other dogs, it goes out the window with these ones. Yeah. Because they have no concept of space. They're in your space. They're in your face. They want that. They almost want that sort of that feeling of being hugged. They like it. And it's really interesting to see the difference. And so for me, who's always because like you, my focus has been on working with very complex behavior cases, especially dogs that are showing aggressive behavior. And we have to be very careful. We have to be very aware of body language and not being too much pressure and not putting too much pressure on the dog or giving them the space that they need. And then when I'm around golden retrievers at Canine Assistance, it's totally different. It's absolutely different. It's like everything goes out the window and it's almost like I'm there not knowing what to do.
Yeah, I think it is really strange. I'm just super fortunate. My best friend is a veterinarian with a behavior specialty, and we practice together a lot, and we're just best friends. So that's just wonderful. And she has a dog from my program as her pet, and we talk all the time about how strange it is to be working day in and day out in behavior practice with dogs, and then come home to this dog that has been bred for really an abnormal trait for the species. And I think it's really important that we recognize that we have selectively bred an abnormal behavior trait in service dogs to be that squishy. And, I always say that my service dog, Macallan, he wants to unzip your skin and crawl inside. I mean, that would be his perfect day, would just to be like baby Bjorned onto me the whole day. and that's an abnormal trait for pet dogs, and certainly for non-domesticated canines, a very abnormal trait. But I think it's a really interesting thing that you see consistently over many service dog organizations, not just ours, that is very much the same. And I really think that's interesting.
I'm talking to Abigail Witthauer. We're going to be back very, very shortly after this message.
Looking to take your dog training skills to the next level and turn your passion into a profession? Check out the Victoria Stilwell Academy for Dog Training and Behavior's professional courses and make your dream of working with animals for a living a reality. With courses ranging from free starter options to the popular Fundamentals course and even VSA's flagship Professional Dog Trainer course, there are options available for every skill level and every type of learner. Want to learn online at your own pace? All of VSA's courses are learner-centered, performance-based experiences designed using the latest concepts in the field of human adult learning to provide maximum efficiency and get you started quickly with a powerful tool set in your arsenal. Want a more customized learning experience? VSA's flagship dog trainer course also provides a premium add-on option which allows you to get the ultimate package. Connect with fellow students in a small private class that meets regularly for live private coaching and support-based meetups. Benefit from shadowing a local mentor in your area, and also attend multiple virtual and in-person learning intensives, obviously only when it's safe and practical to do so. Forget about watching another repurposed webinar or a recorded live event. All of VSA's content is fresh, new, and purpose-built to deliver an unparalleled learning experience. Plus, all dog trainer course students, whether online only or those also in the add-on in-person track, are provided with a dedicated faculty advisor to help mentor you through your course experience every step of the way. During these times of COVID, there are online course options springing up everywhere you turn. But VSA has been delivering its state-of-the-art learning content for years and leading the field with its commitment not just to giving you great material, but delivering it via a powerful learning system custom designed to help you learn and apply what you need to know to give you the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence to change the lives of people and dogs. So join the VSA family today and find out which path is right for you. Learn more and enroll in a free starter course today at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. That's vsdogtrainingacademy.com. Join us at the Victoria Stilwell Academy, the future of dog training.
welcome back. Okay, we're talking all things golden retriever. And you mentioned McCallum, who is your service dog. McCallum, I think, probably has to be the sexiest golden retriever I've ever seen and I've ever met in my life.
He truly
He's
so sexy. Like, it's the best way to
so
describe
sexy.
him.
Oh my God, this
Yes,
dog.
now he's like, he's 7.5, so he's gotten that distinguished gray, and now he's like a silver fox of a dog. He is just so handsome.
I think he's the Clooney of the dog world, even. For
I
those of you who
agree.
like George Clooney, he truly is. He's got that kind of swagger too. He's wonderful.
Yeah, and he just gets better with age. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. How has he improved your life? How is, obviously you're raising service dogs, but because you also have a service dog for yourself, for your disabilities, how has it impacted and changed your life?
Yeah, I think McCowan is such an interesting case study for me, because he changed my life in a lot of ways. Certainly, he changed my life as my own service dog. My Chihuahua Biggie, who we mentioned earlier in this podcast, was actually my first service dog, because at that time in my presentation with my disability, the majority of the thing that I was struggling with was seizure disorder. And so a teeny tiny toy breed dog is just so convenient. And he was wonderful at that. But my disability progressed rather quickly. And it became really quite obvious that I was going to need a dog with more ability than a Chihuahua had, as far as retrieving and opening and things like that. So I got McCallum from a breeder that I knew at that point I wanted to start a service dog program myself. And I really worked with a lot of breeders. And there was a breeder in Atlanta that just really believed in what we were doing and why we were trying to do it. And so we've gotten several dogs from her, and her dogs are the foundation for our dog program. And I think, just the consistency of having a service dog, so that when I'm having a day, like today is a great example. I'm working from home today, but the weather in Alabama is really quite nasty today. We're under tornado warnings. Well, no question, that's going to increase all of my symptoms, both with my seizure disorder, but also my mobility symptoms. These big pressure changes that we have in the Southeast are just like, the worst for my particular disease pattern. So on a day like today, if I wasn't working from home, having McCallum able to go with me is really the difference between being able to go to the grocery store or appointments or things like that with a little bit more confidence than I would be able to do alone. And so I'm traveling next month to Clicker Expo, as a lot of our colleagues are. And the difference in travel with McCallum and without McCallum, I could not travel alone. I would really need a service human or a service dog, and sometimes both. And I like to be really transparent that service dogs aren't always the right tool for every moment and every time. There are days that I need a service human because a service dog isn't enough support for me. And there are days that I don't need a service dog and I can just be like a regular person. And I think that flexibility is really helpful. The other way that McCallum changed my life is because he is McCallum and looks the way he does and garners the attention he does. He really was kind of like the face that launched 1,000 ships as far as my career goes. And that has, it's changed my relationship with him too, for sure. I think I always say Biggie was my heart dog. He was like my whole soul, like the child I birthed from my own loins. And McCallum is much more a relationship more similar to the one I have with my spouse. It's more of a partnership. It's more of a give and take on what we do in life together, which is a really different relationship. And I find that to be true of a lot of service dog recipients, that relationship is a little bit different than your heart dog relationship.
When you travel to these places, are you traveling on a plane? And if you do have to travel, if you do have to go by air, how challenging is that for you? And how annoyed do you get when there are people that pretend to have service dogs when really they aren't service dogs at all? I'm sure you've encountered that.
Sure. That's something I do fly the majority of the time. I fly a lot. And of course, pre-COVID, we flew a ton. The big joke at Southwest is that McAllen had more Sky Miles than most of their Platinum members. And Southwest knew McAllen. We flew so much. And Southwest hub is here in Atlanta, kind of like Delta is in Atlanta. And so in Birmingham, Southwest is the deal. Flying, I think we fly so frequently that it doesn't feel cumbersome at this point. McAllen loves to fly. He's been flying since he was 12 weeks old. It just isn't difficult. But I will say, as planes have gotten less profitable, and so they're trying to fit more people on more planes, let me tell you, when they changed from the foot space, just that 2 inches, what a difference and a learning curve for both me and McAllen. He's quite good at a tuck, but he's not a small dog. He's a big golden retriever. He's about 75 pounds, sometimes 80, depending on how muscly he is at that moment. And when they changed that number of passengers per plane to try to be more profitable, we felt it. I think that the fraudulent service dog situation has changed a lot in the last 10 years and continues to change. I want to applaud the airline industry for really being extremely proactive about 3 years ago to say, you know what, we've got a huge problem here. Let's change the laws. And they did. And the difference has been really meaningful. And I really applaud the people that spent years developing those new changes to try to be accessible for individuals with disabilities, to not make their life harder, but also say, listen, we've got to protect service dogs and non-disabled passengers from undertrained or fraudulently trained dogs. These days, I think I see much more undertrained service dogs than fraudulently trained service dogs, which has really changed the discussion as a whole. It used to be that there were able-bodied people lying and purposefully misrepresenting themselves as someone who needed a service dog, which was pretty repugnant, and I had very little patience for it. But what I see now is individuals who do qualify and are disabled for a service dog that are lacking resources, ability, or education to be able to train a dog for safe public access. And so it is a person who is benefiting from a service dog and perhaps even that individual dog, but the dog itself is undertrained for a number of reasons, whether the dog is just not well suited to be a service dog, or whether the dog just hasn't had the benefit of a professional saying, hey, everybody has blind spots. Here's one here. Let's fix it. And so we're seeing a much larger increase in undertrained dogs rather than fraudulently trained dogs, which I think is not less frustrating, but certainly less depressing, because I have a lot of empathy for those situations.
This industry, the service dog industry, has grown, especially in the industry that you're in. And of course, there's more organizations coming out that are training dogs of all kinds, not just golden retrievers, obviously. There are organizations that will be using rescue dogs for various work and for various jobs, from police work to the service dog industry for disabled people. But tell me a little bit about, did you ever consider using rescue dogs to do this kind of work?
Yeah, we did. I would say we really spent 3 to 5 years trying a lot of different things to see what made sense and what sat with our ethics, and what seemed to be ethical to us as an organization. And ultimately we kind of came to two prongs of our ethical decision making. Is the dog enjoying the work and that ethical piece? And also, are we being responsible with our wait list and the people that are waiting years for these dogs? Are we making ethical choices to be as predictable as possible for our wait list and to keep that wait list as manageable as we possibly can keep it? And that was really what made our decision. And we tried a lot of different things. We tried pulling adolescent dogs that we felt like had really hit social and sexual maturity from shelters, and pulling the ones that we felt were showing the skill sets that we were looking for service dogs. And we had some success with that for sure, but we lost several to unknowable genetic defects. So hip dysplasia, elbow dysplasia, chronic allergies, things that sometimes we don't even think about for a working dog, but for a pet dog is no problem and wonderful. But for a working dog is really career ending when you have an individual that has unique needs because of their disability that, feeding, white fish and potato diet is not in their budget because they're on a fixed income. So allergies matter. And those are things that we ran into. So when we did that a few times, we were like, okay, I don't feel like this is ethical for our wait list and for the human side of it. But I did feel like the dogs enjoyed the work. So we were like, okay, well, let's try that. So then we were like, okay, what if we evaluated pregnant mama rescue dogs? And if they did great, then we'd pull puppies and try it that way. We would have them for a little bit longer. Maybe we could do it. That was just so unsuccessful. And I know programs who do that enormously well. And I know programs who pull rescue dogs and do that enormously well. I think some of the things that factored into that is we are in the deep South, which is sometimes different. And also we are small and funding is hard. And so we were trying to spend our dollar in the best way. And what we found for our own organization is that purpose-bred dogs, specifically bred for health, temperament, and longevity, felt the most ethical for our ethics, that we could place these dogs at a much higher success rate with much more predictability, and they could work longer with less chance of unknown factors. And so that's ultimately what we decided to do. And that has proven to be very successful for us. I always say we're a little bit of a statistical anomaly right now. Our oldest group of doing things that way. So dogs that we were really heavily curating, the oldest ones are near 6. And since those 6-year-olds, we have had 100% success placement rate, which is a complete statistical anomaly. We don't pretend that we have any secret sauce that made that happen. But at this point, we have just been incredibly statistically successful.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's amazing. And I know that you do pay great attention to detail and that you've gone through many different variations of and trying different things. And I know that it's also important to you as well to be educating other people potentially on how to do this and to set up service dog industry in their area. But I hope you're going to talk a little bit more about that at the conference. And so if you want to hear Abigail Witthauer talk more about this really interesting subject, then you can go to dogbehaviorconference.com and register for the Dog Behavior Conference, which is between April 21st and 23rd, online only. And we've got some great speakers, including Abigail. But what I think this is a question that we get asked at Canine Assistance a lot as well, is like, what does it take to to raise and train a service dog? How old do they have to be until they can have a recipient? And then what happens afterwards? And how long is your waiting list? I mean, it seems like, I know at Canine Assistance we have a long waiting list. And how do you choose who's going to get what dog?
Yeah, I think, and I'll certainly be talking about this in detail in the Dog Behavior Conference, specifically towards people that are interested in perhaps offering this service, either breeding their own or curating dogs, or even training dogs that individuals present to you that are disabled and say, I would like this dog to be a service dog. But I think it's really emotionally taxing. And I think that that's sometimes something that we don't talk about enough with professional colleagues, of how emotionally exhausting this is to say no. Because ultimately, I have a finite number of dogs and I have a finite number of hours, and also certainly always a finite amount of money. We're a nonprofit, so we are really incredibly dependent on donations and to make this possible. Service dogs are enormously expensive to raise. They are just because it takes so long, and to breed a really high quality dog with excellent genetics and excellent longevity is expensive. I have my breedings planned out for the next 6 years. So it's just incredibly, my staff always laugh that my breeding wall looks like a serial killer wall. It's like pictures and strings, and it's crazy, because genetics are really valuable. And I feel ethically that if we're going to produce a dog into the world, we have a deep ethical obligation to do that so judiciously and so carefully, because we are choosing to produce. But our wait list right now is 2.5 years minimum. So the people that have been on my wait list for 6 months are due to receive their dogs in 2 years, because right now I have 6-month-old puppies, and then I have our 16-day-old puppies. They will go in one graduating class when they are 2 and 2.5 years old. We used to place at 18 months and 2 years old, but we're always changing, always evolving, always learning. We feel that 2 and 2.5 is really the sweet spot for our dogs, our breeding program. Different dogs of different breeding programs may mature differently than ours, but for us, 2 to 2.5 is the sweet spot. And it is always a balance of, I want to place this dog young because I want them to work as long as possible for their recipients. But I also want to place this dog with maturity and skill so that it's easiest for the recipient to work this dog successfully, and so that the dog is likely to be successful. So that's really tough. I think every organization is really wise to find niches that they are either very experienced in or just really enjoy. And we have certainly done that. Most recently, I had a friend that I grew up with that had a child with a very rare chromosomal abnormality. I placed a service dog with her and her child just because we were longtime friends. And let me tell you, did I fall in love with that placement idea. And we have since placed 2 additional children with this same very rare chromosomal abnormality. And now we're kind of known as like the group that places with this specific very rare genetic disorder. And it suits us. I love, and sometimes it's just emotional attachment. It just worked for us. What they needed and what our dogs provide was a really great fit. And we enjoyed that placement. I place a lot with disability patterns within my own disability spectrum because it's something I feel really confident in. I know what these dogs need to do. I know what these people are living with day in and day out. So some of that is personal experience of what makes sense to me. There are areas that we choose not to place because I'm less comfortable in it, not because they are less worthy. But, I love the fact we do place with combat veterans in the Rover Chase Foundation, but not quite as frequently because I feel like there are organizations that exclusively place for combat veterans. And that's a great thing because that community aspect of placement is so valuable. We do a 10-day match camp. So we'll match usually somewhere between 5 or 7 dogs in one match camp. Everybody comes for 10 days. You live on site all together for 10 full days for the recipient to receive their dog and learn everything they need to know about that dog. And the community made in that match camp lasts for the entire working life of those individuals and those dogs. They talk weekly or even daily. They go on vacations together because there's a bonding experience that happens there that is unique to that lived experience. And follow-up care is a big deal. I probably hear from all of my recipients certainly at least once a month for just a little update or a cute picture, or, hey, this thing changed and my disability changed here, or one of my recipients has just decided to move to New York City. Well, that's fantastic. But subway systems are not a thing that we have in the Southeast. So we're doing a few little retrofit things. The dog is well versed in bus systems and things like that, but subways probably need a little practice. And the dog's been in placement for 2 years, so we're doing some retrofitting. So we do quite a lot of that. We place all over the country. The dogs that are local to us often come and board at my facility when they're out of town, which we love because we just love to see them. All the dogs local to us, we have a fantastic groomer that grooms the graduated service dogs at just a fraction of a normal grooming cost. So we see most of the local ones at least every 3 or 4 weeks, which is so lovely. But the dogs that are further away, I usually get text messages or an email with cute pictures. I have a placement in Maine, and of course they have so much snow, and we never see snow here. So he is just loving snow, and I get lots of snow pictures, and I love that.
You are truly an amazing person. And I know, because I follow you on Facebook and I follow all your work, I know that you have had some very difficult times in your life coping with your disability. But I think why I admire you so much is just because of the depth of knowledge and the passion that you bring to not just, training your companion dogs, but also now to the service dog industry. It's just because you never give up, and you carry on. And I think coping with life anyway is hard enough, and when you're dealing with a disability, that can also make things a lot harder. But you meet it with grace, Abigail. That's all I can say.
That's so kind. And I think that the thing we say in my team meetings all the time when things get hard, or you're just like, oh my gosh, like right now I have these 8-month-old puppies, and they're just hellions. It's the worst age, and they're so precious, but they're just so naughty. And and we'll have a team meeting, and we'll be like, you know what, today we're just going to survive on spite because we're going to prove that we can do it. And I think that there's a lot of that. And I love working with the disabled community because I see so much of that in that community. I find it a really rewarding community to work in, because there is just a lot of, what, they told me I can't do this, and I can. And I want to be very clear that I'm not a big fan of heroics of disabled people, meaning that, there is no reason to do more than they said that you can do. That is not what I mean. I mean that there are days where you are emotionally exhausted and mentally exhausted, and you say, you know what, I am here, and I have a voice, and I have something important to say. And I think that anything that we can do as women, as individuals with disabilities, as whatever we choose to do to say that voice matters, say something, because I think it's important to hear those voices.
Abigail, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I can't wait to hear you speak. You're going to be speaking on service dogs, lessons learned while raising heroes. They are true heroes. You are my hero. Thank you so much. Cannot wait for the Dog Behavior Conference. And thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much. I had such a great time chatting with you, and I look forward to the Dog Behavior Conference. And if you guys want to see more just straight ridiculous puppy content, follow the Rover Chase Foundation on Facebook, because the puppy content is out of control. TikTok too.
Yeah. You do. You have to. And that's important. The Rover Chase Foundation. Donate if you can. I mean, every little bit helps, doesn't it? And it truly is. It's going to change. For this little pup that you're holding up now, one day it's going to change somebody's life.
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing when you hold them at 16 days old and you're like, oh my goodness, you're going to completely change somebody's whole life course.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Abigail.
Thank you.
Take care, and thanks everybody for listening to this incredible podcast. Wow, I was so excited to have her on. And you can hear her speak more at the Dog Behavior Conference. Abigail Witthauer, she's a certified VSPDT trainer, owner and founder of Rover Chase and the Rover Chase Foundation. Please donate if you can. Really important work. Thanks, everybody, and tune in next week. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Victoria Stilwell's Positively podcast. For Victoria's online dog training courses, more information, and helpful dog training tips, visit her official website at positively.com. Become a professional dog trainer with the Victoria Stilwell Academy at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. Get connected on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media as Victoria Stilwell, and follow her on Twitter at Victoria S. Be sure to tune in next time as Victoria helps you and your dog live your best life together. Positively.